Welcome, everyone, to what is now the third episode of the Nickel and Dime podcast. I am Tyler Eaton, joined as always by Harrison Valk. We are in the podcast dungeon here at Revolution 91.7. We are affiliated officially with Revolution 91.7. So a huge thank you to them for allowing us to record in studio now. We have come a long, long way from recording in Harrison's apartment, but here we are. We are now on the Anchor app. As you know, we are also on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe. We would really appreciate that. If you're not and you're listening somewhere, whether it be the Anchor app itself, whether it be one of the mini apps that it sends you to, whether it be the TuneIn app, the #1 radio app on the iPhone, Android, whatever phone you have, like and subscribe, whatever they have for you to do, follow us, whatever. Let us know that you're listening. We really appreciate all of our listeners. This week, though, we're going to talk week 3 of college football, including Western's very close loss to Louisville, a wild week across the board, specifically in the SEC and Big Ten for opposite reasons, and another update on Harry's Heisman Hopefuls. Natalie is back with us for another edition of Natural Selection, and John Alden is joining us in studio to talk WKU football as well as the national landscape. Stay tuned later on. We're going to look into week 2 of the NFL season. We're going to look at the Titans' big win over the Texans. But for now, let's talk college football. After falling to FCS Maine, Western Kentucky went up to Louisville. Not a lot of expectations for the team in that game. A lot of people expected the Hilltoppers to get blown out in that one, but they go up, and for most of the game, they were in the lead. They end up falling in that one 20-17 to the Cardinals. Joining me now to talk about that is John Alden. John comes from Red Zone Radio. You can listen to that Sundays 7 to 8, right, John?
Yes, sir.
7 to 8 for more stuff on WKU football, volleyball, soccer. They've got it all there. But for now, he's here with us to talk football. And John, overall, I think Western, just to put it simply, they might have saved Sanford's job for the time being with that performance.
I would say it definitely came down to the fact that they were able to get the run game going on offense against Louisville. And I don't know if that's necessarily credit to necessarily all of WKU. I think maybe Louisville's defensive line might have some issues of its own, but I think in the long run, this is going to be a big confidence booster for the Hilltoppers, especially on offense whenever they're playing. They got Ball State this weekend. So,
I mean, and the thing that a lot of people are pointing to that made the difference was Eccles was out in this one. Mm-hmm. They started Duncan, and then Davis Shanley comes in, the redshirt freshman, and he was not spectacular by any means, but it seems like with him in there, this offense is just completely different than it was before. It just opens up what they're able to do.
Yes, he definitely seemed like a really good game manager, and also he was able to open up more of a different dynamic from his offensive perspective. He was able to run the ball himself. I know he got one rushing touchdown there and early in the second quarter, something like that. So it adds another dimension that they didn't have when Drew Eccles was starting.
And you touched on that, and I've talked to some of the football players just like having conversations, and the way they put it, they were like, this dude wasn't that fantastic in practice. He'd come out there, he'd miss some throws, which he did miss some throws. He had some balls that should have been picked off watching the game. But they were like, this came out of nowhere. So my initial thought when this happened was, because I saw a post-game interview where Sanford was like, this guy is the leader that we've needed. This is the guy that we've needed out there on the field. Well, if that's the case, why hasn't he been out there on the field? And why have you had Eccles out there if this is the guy all along that you've needed?
Well, kind of like you were saying, they didn't really know that he was going to come out there and do that. And now that you can see what he does in big pressure situations, I think it's safe to say that he's probably going to get the nod this weekend against Ball State. And I think it might be safe for him to hopefully be the starter for the rest of the season because he's a lot younger than Drew Eccles is. This is the future of this football team, especially at quarterback. So.
And the guys that I talked to said that. I said, how long is he going to start? And they said he's going to be the starter for the rest of the season. And I was like, that's great, because the offense looked a lot better with him in there. WKU, it seemed like for most of the game, was the better team. Watching the game, they got the big lead, and then it seemed like play calling just reared its ugly head again. WKU was down there on the 1-yard line and then ends up calling an option play, I think. That gets busted for a 4-yard loss. Then they get a 5-yard sack, and they go to kick a field goal, and that gets blocked. And then Louisville comes down and scores a touchdown, and all of a sudden, it's 14-13, and all the momentum is gone. So it seems like there seems to be an issue with play calling once they get down there in those pressure field situations. And I think at the end of the day, isn't that on Sanford?
I would say so. Honestly, I think the game itself changed right at the end of the second quarter whenever Louisville was deep back in their own territory. They hadn't been able to get a first down in quite some time, and they were able to march all the way downfield. And it seemed like it did something to WKU's confidence. They realized a team that was supposed to be better than them was finally getting the momentum that they should have had from the very beginning. And I think we saw that continue to grow throughout the second half, third quarter, all the way to the rest of the game, and essentially get all the way to the 20-17 result that we saw. So.
I mean, obviously, like you touched on, Louisville is a team that's thought of coming in as the better team than Western. They were favored by a lot more than the 3-point margin than they won by. I think it was a 24-point spread.
And it could have even hit that spread if they would have caught at least 3 or 4 of them easily drop passes.
Yeah, I mean, Louisville did not play their best game by any stretch at all. I mean, I'm not saying that they came out there and gave us their best and we gave them our best and, we almost got them. It certainly was not the case at all. But the common theme between those two games is that right now it doesn't look like this Western team knows how to close out games. And it's a very young team, but at some point moving forward, you are 0-3 right now. And you can only afford to drop 3 more games, and you've still got some really tough teams left on the schedule. They're going to have to learn how to close out games. And at the end of the day, that once again, despite how young they are, I think that comes down to Sanford instilling that mentality into them.
And I think it starts this weekend with Ball State. You cannot go 0-4 to start the season.
Right, absolutely not.
And you have to, I think the players need just a win to get the morale back where it needs to be, where it was at the beginning of the season, back prior to the main game going into the Wisconsin game. They need something to give them that boost. And I think this weekend we're going to see a lot of what we saw against Louisville. We're going to see more of it come together because this Ball State team isn't a Louisville Cardinals team in any case. It's not an ACC team. They're going to be able to get a lot more plays developing on offense. We're probably going to see a lot more scoring, hopefully. But
hopefully, yeah.
I think, like I said, this is the turning point for Western Kentucky this weekend.
And you are an Indiana fan. Those that know you know that you are a diehard Indiana Hoosier fan. Indiana just beat Ball State this past weekend.
Sir.
And I'm sure that you have a lot that you have seen from that team going into this Western game, their matchup with Ball State. So what have you seen from them that makes you think that Western might have something there that they can exploit offensively to really get the offense kicking into gear?
Well, defensively, I would say their run, if they're able to do the run game like they did against Louisville, they're hopefully going to get a lot of points on the board. Indiana was able to put up over 200 rushing yards on Ball State. And if I would say Ball State's rushing defense is a lot worse than Louisville's, maybe. So if they're able to exploit like they did the Louisville Cardinals, then that could be a good sign for Western Kentucky.
So for them to win that game, you're saying that the key is to sustain this run game, continue to get that going. I think they're going to be able to, especially now with Shanley in there and the creativity that they have in the run game. Do you see much from their offense? You think they pose much of a threat to that Western defense that we touched on? We think is the strong point of this Western team. They did a really good job against Louisville. The defense I thought played pretty well, except for a few series. So do you think this Ball State offense poses any particular threat to the defense?
Well, Ball State's offense is actually very similar style as Western Kentucky in the sense that their quarterback, Riley Neal, is kind of a dual threat, but he's able to pass the ball really well. He was their second leading rusher in the game, and I think also statistically for the entire season so far. So containing their quarterback, Riley Neal, I would say be the key there. If you're able to stop him, they won't be putting many points on the board.
So while WKU ended up falling to Louisville, there were some teams that had a lot worse losses than that in Week 3. One of those specifically, John, being Wisconsin, who we talked about WKU playing pretty well. Of course, Wisconsin, the far superior team in that matchup. Wisconsin fell at home to BYU, a BYU team that had just lost at home to Cal. So Wisconsin has fallen all the way to 18 in the AP poll. BYU jumps in at 25, which to me, I don't understand how these AP polls early season work. I mean, if it's early season and BYU just beat Wisconsin, BYU should be ranked ahead of them, and then Cal should be ahead of BYU. Blah, blah, blah. The AP poll now is really just a joke.
I feel like the polls don't even really matter.
No, they don't matter at all right now. Yeah, absolutely.
They like to tease everybody every year with this kind of stuff. So.
We as sports fans just like to have rankings. Like we are really intrigued by power rankings or positional rankings. Who is the best point guard? Who is the best quarterback right now?
When Indiana's doing well, I'm always looking up Big Ten power rankings to see what everybody else's opinion on my Hoosiers
I honestly thought that they might show up in the others receiving votes this week. Give them another week. They might have been.
They go 4-0 and beat Michigan State.
Yeah, they've
got
a big game this week. We'll touch on that, but just looking at Wisconsin and then touching on the Big Ten, we just mentioned Indiana. The Big Ten did not have a very good week last week. In particular, the Big Ten West. Wisconsin lost to BYU. Akron went to Northwestern and beat them. Kansas beats Rutgers, and we know what Kansas is. Kansas can't hardly beat an FCS team. In fact, they lost to an FCS team in their season opener, and they beat Rutgers bad. I mean, they beat them by about 40.
I'd say what Rutgers has been the Big Ten punching bag in pretty much every sport since they've come into the conference.
That's not wrong. I mean, but Kansas? I mean, that's bad. It gets worse, though. I mean, that's not even where it stops. Temple beat Maryland by 3 touchdowns, and Maryland started off their season by beating Texas, who just thumped USC. I mean, I don't understand what's going on. USF wins at Illinois. That one, I'm not shocked by that.
Illinois was actually winning the majority of that game.
Yeah, they were,
too,
and they let USF come back and win it. And then the biggest blunder, I think, of them all, Troy goes to Nebraska. Scott Frost's first season, and they beat them.
I think people are jumping way too early on this Scott Frost bandwagon. I don't think he's going to be bad at Nebraska per se, but I think it's going to take a year or two for him to get what he wants implemented into his system. So
I mean, that's pretty bad though. I don't know if it's as bad as Brom going to Purdue and losing to Eastern Michigan 2 weeks ago. Which, by the way, WKU fans that bring back Brom. They are 0-3 right now, given they just lost to Missouri by a field goal, but they're not looking very good at all. So, for those of you saying, I wish we still had Brom. Where's Brom? The glory days are gone. They're 0-3. They've got the same record as us, given neither are very good. But
it's interesting because people thought that the year Purdue is having right now was going to be how last year was. And the success that they had last season was going to be year 2.
Right.
And now it seems like it's a bit of a role reversal. So who knows where they're headed right now.
It kind of feels like Brom comes in, gets the guys that the previous regime has pretty good luck with them, and then at WKU, he did the smart thing. He's like, I'm gone. I brought in 2 bad recruiting classes. I've really used up all the good guys. I'm a jump ship and take this opportunity to go up to Purdue. But I mean, that's beyond the point. The Big Ten as a whole, though, right now, not looking very good. Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, those 4 teams were really high in a lot of people's early season rankings. But right now, it looks like in terms of college football playoff, we just talked about the rankings don't matter until then. But just looking at the teams themselves, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really think Ohio State right now is the only real contender that the Big Ten has.
And outside of that, maybe Penn State, but Penn State looked kind of questionable in one of the early week games. But I would say right now, Ohio State easily the early favorite.
Penn State barely escaped Appalachian State.
But they did destroy Pittsburgh.
But Pittsburgh has been, I mean, they've been down they're not the Pittsburgh of old that was, running through the Big East, and they come into the ACC and it feels like they beat Clemson every other year for some reason. But they're not the same Pittsburgh team. I don't know. The Big Ten did not have a good week.
One other little fun fact about that Northwestern Akron game. Do you know how long it has been since Akron has defeated a Big Ten team?
How long?
It was the 1800s.
Oh my gosh.
1800s. And they weren't even an FBS. I mean, figures, obviously, there was FCS back then.
Of course.
But yeah, it's been that long.
And I mean, you come in there. And this is a Northwestern team. They were ranked at the end of last season. I remember they beat UK in the bowl game. It was a top 25 team. Everybody was like, yeah, UK gets to play a top 25 team. They couldn't hang with that Northwestern team. And now they're losing to Akron.
And it just makes Purdue's loss even worse, too.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue lost to them in the season opener. There were huge expectations for this Purdue team coming into this year. I just don't know. Now, the Big Ten, up there at the beginning of the year, it seemed like with the SEC in terms of best conference in football. And right now, it seems like that is really swayed towards the SEC.
And I wouldn't even put Big Ten in 2 or 3 probably right now.
I saw a ranking. If someone has some kind of index that they use, and I think the Big Ten was 4th right now.
I think that's fair.
I think they were 4th. But the SEC, I think, is clearly right now the number 1 conference in America. And the biggest game in the SEC last week was LSU and Auburn at Jordan-Hare. LSU won 22-21 on a last-second field goal. Last week, I closed the podcast by saying that you should not be watching for LSU to take the next step. I got to swallow a bit on that one. But here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. I was looking at the stats afterwards, and I watched the game. I was producing the Western game at Commonwealth and watching that game while listening to the Western game. So I watched it. And as I watched it, I was like, man, I'm just not impressed by either of these teams. And the number one thing that came through my head was if I took one of these teams off the field right now, the way that they're playing right now, and put them on a neutral site with Alabama, I think Bama wins by 3 touchdowns.
And that's why I think Bama is so far ahead of the rest of the college football landscape right now. I don't think maybe Ohio State could contend with them, but other than that, I think Alabama at this point in time will run away with the college football playoff championship.
We'll talk about later some of the games from next week, but this really stood out to me. So Clemson went to Texas A&M and won by 2 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this week, Alabama hosts Texas A&M, and right now the line in that game is Alabama by 26.5. They almost beat Clemson. They lost to Clemson by 2, and Alabama is favored by almost 4 touchdowns to beat them.
And I think it's going to be similar with every matchup they have. They're going to have a 3 or 4 touchdown line, and until somebody proves they can contend with Alabama, you're going to continue to see that.
I mean, with Tua Tagovailoa in there, and I know Harrison is going to touch on him later in his Heisman hopefuls, they're completely different because Nick Saban, we talk about this all the time, and everybody talks about it. He has never had an elite quarterback. He's had NFL quarterbacks, but that's completely different from being an elite college quarterback. Tua is an elite college quarterback, and it is crazy to watch them function with him in there.
Yeah, I don't think they've had a Heisman candidate since Mark Ingram, am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, they've had some top-notch running backs, and they still do. They've got 2 5-star running backs.
But when's the last time they've had a Heisman quarterback?
I don't know. I'm sure they might have had a finalist at some point, but not in recent memory.
I can't even think of the old
Was A.J.
coach's
McCarron?
name.
Did he get some votes? Maybe.
Possibly.
I mean, he was just a really good game manager. He's not Tua Tagovailoa. Tua can win you a game by himself. He came in as a freshman and won the national championship.
He's the quarterback everybody wants.
Yeah, I mean, there are some really good quarterbacks this year. There are a lot of good quarterbacks in college football this year. To give Alabama a quarterback of that level with that defense and the talent that he has around him, it's ridiculous. And right now, the SEC, it feels like it's top heavy. It feels like it's Alabama, Georgia from the East. It feels like they're clearly going to run away with that division. And right now, it feels like college football as a whole is really top heavy. And we're going back to the AP poll as much as we love to bash it and whatever. But right now, the top 6 teams: Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4, Oklahoma 5, LSU at 6. Right now, the gap between number 2 Georgia and number 6 LSU in the rankings by voters is the same as between number 6 LSU and number 7 Stanford. It's actually less. So there's a bigger gap, according to the voters, between LSU and Stanford at 6 and 7 than Georgia at 2 and LSU at 6. So when you look at those 6 teams, realistically, is there really a team outside of those 6 that you could see competing for a national championship or at least a playoff spot?
I wouldn't say right now. I think we need to wait a few more weeks to see if those teams that are up and coming do anything, any sort of damage against other good teams. But I would say right now, those 6 teams, that's what we got to go with.
The only 2 that I could think of, like right off the top of my head, number 1, Notre Dame, just because of their schedule. I think if they come out of their schedule with 1 loss, they're in. 1 loss or less, I think they get in just because of how tough it is.
Okay.
And that does depend on how good USC ends up being, because that game is always a big game for them strength of schedule-wise. So if USC isn't very good, that hurts them. But I think Notre Dame could get in. I don't think they're good enough right now to get in. They struggled with Ball State. They struggled with Vandy. And then the other team for me that comes to mind is West Virginia.
Okay.
Just because I think they're the only team that can compete with Oklahoma right now in the Big 12.
I would say so. And an interesting thing about Notre Dame and them still being an independent, I think that's going to end up hurting them again, as it has in the past. And eventually, they're going to have to make a move, most likely to the ACC. But if they get snubbed a bit because they're not in the conference championship game, that's going to make a difference eventually, I feel like.
They have to play 4 ACC teams a year, right? It's 4 or something. I don't know why they don't schedule Clemson. I don't know why those 2 teams don't schedule each other. I feel like them playing each other, the loser's okay, because it's an out-of-conference loss against a really good team. I don't know why they don't schedule each other within that, but I don't have power over that. Looking at some big games coming up this week, Florida Atlantic goes to number 16 UCF. I think that could be a sneaky good game. We know how good FAU is. Number 14 Mississippi State goes to UK. UK, I think, was 5th on the others receiving votes for the top 25 this week. Of course, they beat Florida. I think that's going to be a really good game. It's going to be the test. 3-game set of A&M, Mississippi State, and South Carolina. So if you're going to prove yourself as a top 25 team, that's how you do it. Number 2, Georgia goes to Missouri. Missouri just beat Purdue, as we mentioned. They've got Drew Lock at quarterback. He can sling it.
I feel like they've had Drew Lock for a very long time as well.
It feels like he's been there for a long, but he started as a freshman. He filled in as a freshman, and he came out there. He threw for 500 yards one game or something. But now he does it every game. I mean, it's not even weird. I think he's already got 1,300 yards through 3 games. He's ridiculous. A&M, as we mentioned, they go to Bama. The line on that one, 26.5 between 2 ranked teams. A&M's ranked now, so you've got a matchup between 2 ranked teams, and Bama is favored by almost 4 touchdowns.
I kind of feel like I would at least give Texas A&M a better line than 26.
26.5. So you would take the under.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe more like 17.
But I mean, Ole Miss was thought to be able to come in there and hang with Alabama, and they torched them. It was not even close. And that was an Ole Miss defense that, I mean, we know how good Texas Tech is every year on offense. They held them to 27. Alabama scored, what was it, 63? Something
63.
on them? Like it was 63-7, wasn't it? That's ridiculous.
It's almost like they're playing an FCS opponent.
Oh my goodness. And people get on to them for playing them, and then they come out and they play other SEC opponents and do the same thing. They are ridiculous. TCU coming off a loss to Ohio State. They played pretty well in that game. They go to Texas coming off that big win against USC. Michigan State 24 right now. They go to Indiana. Like you mentioned, that's a big game for the Hoosiers. Would probably propel them into the top 25. Number 7, Stanford goes to 20, Oregon, and then Arizona State, who just got knocked out of the top 25 by San Diego State. They go to number 10, Washington. So out of those games, and maybe another that I didn't mention, John, which game do you think that you're looking most forward to outside of just the Indiana game, of course? I know you're really looking forward to that one.
Let me see that list real fast.
You want to look at it?
Let me get a quick look.
Go ahead, take a glance.
Honestly, I like TCU Texas just because I think Texas is kind of getting a bit of a bounce back right now with what they did with USC, and a lot of people like to doubt Texas. I know a lot of people like to make fun of Texas just because they're like, oh, Texas is back every single year when they have that good recruiting class or whatever it is.
To those people's credit, everyone does say Texas is back every single year. I mean, it's not like they don't say that, but now you were the only one on Red Zone. I think you told me about this. You were the only one on Red Zone to pick Texas to beat USC,
yes, right? And not for any particular reason. Everybody was picking against them. I was like, well, let's pick Texas. Maybe something can happen with them.
So you didn't actually see anything there. You were just like, yeah.
Well, I do know they're run by Tom Herman, and I'm like, okay, their offense is eventually going to do something. And they did something. So
I think looking at those games, I really like that game. I think that's going to be a sneaky good game. I, as a born and raised UK fan, and every single year, UK will win 2 or 3 or 4 games, and everyone's like, this is the year when we're not a basketball school anymore. I want to see this game.
And trust me, it's the same way with Indiana.
I know it is. It has to be. I mean, every single basketball school, it feels like, goes through the same phase. I know Duke had a good team a few years ago. They had a few good teams.
Are they in the top 25 right now as well in football? Duke?
Who? Duke?
Or were they last week? They were at some point this season already.
They might be, or they're somewhere in there. I don't know. But I really want to see this game because if UK can beat Mississippi State, they're in the top 25. They move up 22, 21. They might be in the top 20. Because Nick Fitzgerald and that crew, they are no joke. That offense can put up points. They can run the football. They're tough. They beat up pretty good on a really good Kansas State team. They beat them 31-10. And outside of that game, they averaged 50 points a game on the season. So I'm really interested in it because we know UK is a run-centric team. Terry Wilson, Benny Snell. This is going to be the best defense and offense that they've faced this year. They struggled early on with Central Michigan. Florida's offense looked atrocious in that game. It's not going to be the case in this one. If Kentucky's going to beat Mississippi State, they're going to have to play their best game, I believe. And I do want to touch on this Michigan State-Indiana game, though, because I know you know a lot about them. What do you think is going to happen in that one? Do you think Indiana... Now, I know you think they've got a realistic shot, and I do too. I think they very well could beat them, especially at home. What do you think they're going to need to do to pull out that win?
Well, here's my issue right now. Michigan State come off the loss against Arizona State, but they've had a bye week in between that, so they're going to have a lot of extra rest. I do think Indiana's going to be riding an emotional high after these first 3 wins. Peyton Ramsey looks wonderful at quarterback. Everyone's looked good. Stevie Scott, freshman running back, putting up back-to-back 100-yard games as a freshman. It's never happened in program history, or at least as fast as he did it. So if they're able to be consistent on offense, use the run game to their ability that they have so far, I think we're going to see a close game, especially if Michigan State is still shaky. I'm not 100% sure what to expect from that. I know Brian Lewerke's really good. LJ Scott's really good. If our D-line
LJ Scott is really good, I know.
That's going to be the key. D-line, containing the run game. And it's going to be for Michigan State as well. I think whoever's run game performs better is going to come out on top, for sure.
So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens with all of these games. Hopefully nobody makes me look completely foolish like I did last week with LSU and Auburn. Darn you, LSU. You know, I just had to make one bold prediction, and you have to come out there and completely turn it around and smack me in the face with it. But regardless of that, John, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. If you want to hear more of John or more about WKU sports, you can tune into Red Zone Radio on Revolution 91.7 Sunday nights.
Yes, sir.
7 to 8. All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
that, it's now time for Harry's Heisman Hopefuls. Harrison, you come through every week for us with these Heisman Hopefuls, and I know you've got 5 good ones for us this week, so go ahead and start us off with your first Heisman Hopeful.
First up, we have Mr. Justin Herbert, quarterback for Oregon. Oregon is ranked number 20 in the top 25 right now, and last week against their very, very successful win against the winless San Jose State.
You don't have to plug in that San Jose State is winless. I mean,
it was an easy win for Oregon that day. Let's just say that.
Yeah, just let Justin have his numbers. I mean,
Got you. He threw for 309 yards and 3 touchdowns, and this season he has thrown for 840 yards and 12 touchdowns. Oregon plays Stanford next week. They're number 7, and that's going to be a huge Pac-12 matchup to see who's going to come up out on top and who's going to. Maybe Oregon could go up higher in the top 25 if they win that game.
Oh, they definitely. If they win that game, they're top 15, no doubt.
Definitely. I think Mr. Matthew Hargrove would be very happy.
He would be. Another red zone kid.
Very, very big Oregon fan as well. He picked them to win this week as well.
Of course he did.
Yep.
What else would you expect from an Oregon fan picking the Oregon game?
Yeah, definitely. Next, I believe he is actually the only new one I have. So everybody else is pretty old. There's some people that I've mentioned already. Some include Kyler Murray. He's the quarterback for Oklahoma, and he was against Iowa State this game and Iowa State this week. That was a very, very interesting game.
It was. It was
to
a
watch.
really good game.
I did not expect Iowa State to score. I keep saying Idaho or whatever. These states that start with the letter I. There's so much of them. They're all in the same area on the map. It's just confusing. But Iowa State, they put up a really, really good game against Oklahoma. I was pretty impressed.
They always play well at home against those really top Big 12 teams. Specifically, it seems to be like Oklahoma. Whenever Oklahoma goes there to play, Iowa State always seems to play their best football game of the season.
Yeah, they do. And Kyler Murray continued to do well. He threw for 348 passing yards and 3 touchdowns to help Oklahoma win that game against Iowa State. And this season, he has 863 passing yards and 8 touchdowns. And we got 3 more on the list, also quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa.
You're getting closer. Tua Tagovailoa.
I'm just going to call him Tua at this point. I don't want to make him upset by mispronouncing his name.
Just say Tua.
Time. Just Tua.
Everybody knows who he is by now.
Yep. Quarterback for Alabama. Completed 11 of 15 passes against their very, very successful win against Ole Miss. Don't understand why people were thinking Ole Miss was going to win. But he threw for 191 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against Ole Miss. The rest of the very explosive Bama offense took care of the other touchdowns. And for this season, he has thrown for 646 passing yards and completed 8 touchdowns this season. And they play Texas A&M next, which should be another interesting game.
It should be a good game. It's not supposed to be a good game, as me and John talked about. I think it'll be decently close, but I actually, if I had to pick between the under or the over on that super huge, almost 4 touchdown spread, I would actually take the over.
Yeah.
I actually would. This Bama team is so complete and so good. That's a story for another day, and it's all because right now of Tua Tagovailoa.
Yes, it is. And we're going to see a lot more of him this season. And then we have Dwayne Haskins, quarterback for Ohio State, which was another very good game.
TCU Ohio State game was very good.
That was very good. I was not expecting that from. I thought TCU was going to win.
Really?
Honestly. Yeah.
Really? I don't know about that one.
Okay. Well, anyway, he threw for 344 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, has thrown for 890 passing yards and 11 touchdowns this season, which is very similar to Justin Herbert's.
Very similar. Very similar players, both guys that can throw and run. Both guys have a lot of dynamic playmakers around them. Dwayne Haskins has been very good this season. It's kind of a question mark for them as to whether or not he'd be able to come in there and play super well. And so far, he's done an excellent job, especially not even having Urban Meyer there these first 3 games. He's been really good, and he's certainly earned his spot there.
Definitely, and Urban Meyer will be back soon, too. So
he's back this next week.
Yeah.
He's back.
He's back now, and it'll be interesting to see how he wants Dwayne Haskins to plug into that Ohio State offense so they can continue to win these games, and so they can Dwayne Haskins can continue to bump up his stats. Last, but definitely not least, is Will Grier, quarterback for West Virginia.
Is that his introduction every time that you do Will Grier? Last, but definitely not least?
Well, yes.
I'm pretty sure that you've done that every time for Will Grier.
I know. But
that's good, though. I mean, that's just consistency, you know?
Yes, it's consistency. I don't know why I always mention him last. Hopefully I mention him first next time, because unfortunately this weekend he did not play. His game was canceled. He has 761 passing yards and 9 touchdowns this season. And him and the rest of the Mountaineers will play Kansas State. All quarterbacks for Harry's Heisman hopefuls. Hopefully next week we'll have some running backs and some more defensive tackles in there. I would like to see some. Definitely going to continue to look into Jonathan Taylor and Eric Oliver. That's his name, right?
Ed. You are the name master.
Yes.
Between
yes, I am.
Ed Oliver, Tua Tagovailoa, Bilal Powell. I mean, you are just on these names.
And last but not least, Will Greer.
And last but not least, Will Greer. Thank you so much, Harrison, for always doing such a good job with your Heisman hopefuls. Just like last week, it is time for the contradiction of the century. We go from Harrison, who really knows his football stuff, to this segment called Natural Selection, where our returning guest, Natalie Turner, will pick the games based strictly off of the mascots.
Yep.
And Natalie, last week, you went 4-1.
I've got a good record.
You went 4-1. So this week we brought you back with the chance to now go maybe undefeated. You feeling it? You think you can do it?
Man, I don't know. Let's see what we got.
All right.
Curious.
Game number 1 for you. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish versus the Wake Forest Demon Deacons.
Whoa, dude. Okay.
I've 100% picked this game because I know that you would enjoy analyzing it.
All right. So Irish, they're not Scottish, so they are automatically at a disadvantage. Deacons, that's usually Catholic, right? Like,
yes.
I say this as somebody who was raised Catholic. I'm just not certain all the time. So they're what, demon deacons?
It's a little bit of a contradiction, kind of
Yeah.
like you coming after Harrison and everything.
See,
Yeah.
That kind of says to me that they have both the power of God and demons on their side. So.
And anime. Yeah. They've got
So,
God and the anime.
Personally, I think I'm gonna have to go with the demon deacons on this because Irish, they're pretty tough and they can drink a lot.
So now that one was pretty quirky. This one's just pretty weird. Neither of these are really like straight up traditional mascots at all. So this is completely up to your imagination to go where you want with this.
Okay.
The North Texas Mean Green versus the Liberty Flames.
I think fire in this case, usually beats grass type Pokemon. So I think I'm gonna have to go with the Liberty Flames or whatever they are.
I cannot agree more. From that perspective, at least, I couldn't agree more. Now, this one's just out there. The Stanford Cardinal, which for perspective, it's not the bird, a cardinal, it's a tree. It's just a tree.
Oh, see, I thought you were gonna say another Catholic.
No. No more Catholic references. The Stanford Cardinal, their mascot is a tree versus the Oregon Ducks. So basically, a pack of ducks versus a tree.
Well, this is tough because honestly, I don't particularly feel like either one is super aggressive. I don't really feel like either one
You don't feel
has-
like trees are that aggressive?
Not really. Some of them are. It just depends. Like those aggressively smelly trees. Like
Yeah,
that. But I don't think a cardinal is supposed to be smelly. But I will say, I don't really, unless you have, how many players are on a football team?
A lot. Like you have 85 on scholarship.
That's really not that many if you think of them as ducks.
If you think of them as ducks, then I guess not.
The ducks can poop on a tree. The ducks can bite on a tree.
Wait, them pooping on the tree, doesn't that help the tree?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything they could do that would really be that detrimental to a tree. So I'm going with the Cardinals.
Okay. Now this one, two animals. This one more of a traditional matchup. The Miami of Ohio Redhawks versus the Bowling Green of Ohio Falcons.
What color is the falcon?
Their team color is orange, so I'm
Okay.
going to go with that. Orange and brown,
Well,
something like that.
As we all learned in kindergarten, there are 3 primary colors, and they are yellow, blue, and red. And I think if they're the primary colors, that makes them stronger than non-primary colors. So I'm going to have to go with the red Hawks.
So far you've gone to primary colors and Pokemon to help you pick these games.
It's my expertise. What can I say?
Okay.
I think I'm going to go Red Hawks because I like the color red.
Okay, and this last one is a chance at redemption for you. We have brought back the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, which for those of you that listened last week, you know that these are the Fairy Roosters.
Okay.
Going up against the Louisiana Lafayette Ragin' Cajuns, which is basically to sum up, they are just angry folks from the bayou.
I love that description. Angry folks from the bayou. And in real life, I would not be like messing with an angry person from the bayou because I believe that they have knowledge that I don't. But you know who else has knowledge that I don't?
The fairy roosters?
People who are arcane. And clearly I underestimated the power of the arcane last time. So I'm going to go with the Chanticleers.
You have the Chanticleers in a revenge matchup for you. You think they're going to pull through for you this time?
They better. Either that or I'm like, they're going to like hex me because I doubted them in the first place. So
every week it's just going to come down to the Chanticleers completely throwing everything off for you.
I guess it could be. They might have thrown every single match but theirs off. We never know.
So Natalie 4-1 last week. We'll see how she does this week. Thank you once again for joining me, Natalie. If you want to hear more from us, just a quick shameless plug. Oh, yeah. We are on Revolution 91.7 every Monday, 6 to 9 in the a.m. with the Must Be a Morning Show. It is just as wacky as this segment.
Oh, yeah. But it's possibly even less logical.
Somehow even less logical than this. But Natalie, thank you so much for joining us again.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
A big thanks to Natalie for joining us once again for Natural Selection. 4-1 last week. Hopefully she can pull out some similar success this week. But now it's time to move on from college football, the amateur side of football, to the pro side. Let's talk some NFL. It is time for us to talk about the NFL. A big week in the NFL last week. Of course, every week's a big week in the NFL, but it was just an amazing week of football. A lot of close games. Another tie between the Packers and the Vikings. There were some more video game numbers put up. We'll talk about that. Harrison's Super Bowl pick, Raiders, remain winless. They really are trying to do to you what LSU did to me. Okay. Well, I guess we'll get into that later.
We can talk more. We can talk.
I guess we'll get into that later. But for now, the big storyline of the week for Tennessee Titans fans: Mike Vrabel gets his first win as head coach of the Titans. They beat a Houston Texans team that, honestly, Harrison, I didn't see the Titans being able to compete with, especially this early on in the season after that loss to the Dolphins.
No, definitely not. And I mean, the Texans do have Deshaun Watson. They have DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt. But I feel like they definitely put up a good fight against the Titans this weekend. And I feel like after the performance that we saw on Sunday, I don't think the Titans really have to worry more about the Texans. I think that it's good that they won. It's great that they won. Right. It was a very close game, but I feel like they need to worry more about the Jaguars this season.
I mean, the Jaguars are the favorite in the division. I still don't know about this Titans team. I mean, when you look at the numbers, of course, the numbers are just numbers. The who wins is what matters. The only numbers that matter are the scoreboard.
Yeah,
But the Titans were outgained 437 to 283 in this one. I mean, that's not very good. And of course, you do have Blaine Gabbert in there at quarterback, and there's only so much you can expect from them. That they really ended up winning the game. You look back at it because of a trick play on a punt that they ended up throwing for a touchdown. Kevin Byard was the best quarterback on the team in this game. I mean,
yeah.
But I just don't know. The defense really didn't look that good. It didn't. They held the Texans to 17 points, but they really should have scored a lot more. The biggest plus I think that you can take away from this one, especially with Gabbert in there at quarterback, Harrison, is the fact that regardless of who was gaining more yards and how good the Texas offense was able to come out there and attack this Titans defense, the Titans offense did a really good job of staying out there on the field and sustaining drives to keep that Texans offense on the sideline.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Blaine Gabbert didn't do as bad. He didn't score. His passing yards weren't as high as some people anticipated. He did throw a touchdown.
You really don't expect much from Blaine Gabbert coming in there at quarterback. He came in there. His job is not to lose. I guess from that standpoint, it was a success.
Yeah, definitely. But I would say so. Yeah.
Moving forward, if they really want to compete, not just for the division, which that Jaguars team is on another level. They came out there. They proved it against the Patriots. They played fantastic.
Did you see that one-arm catch from that one receiver on the Jaguars?
Yeah, I did. Keelan Cole. He's a baller.
Yeah.
Walked on to Kentucky Wesleyan. Now in the NFL. Went undrafted.
Yeah, from a D2 school in Owensboro.
Story. I've got a friend that plays for Kentucky Wesleyan. Shout out to the Panthers. I think you're the Panthers. Shout out to the Panthers. They're winless this season. We know how it feels. We're right there with you. Anyways.
And now you got an NFL star who's
Yeah,
probably...
now you got an NFL star. So, I mean,
for the
hey,
Jacksonville Jaguars.
anything can happen. But
very true.
I mean, that Jaguars team, it just feels like it's above everybody else in the division. But for one game, at least, it seemed like the Titans could at least maybe get in there and compete for the wild card. I mean, the secondary didn't look great. The pass rush is still not there.
No.
The pass rush is an issue that needs to be fixed. Harold Landry does not seem to be the solution. Given he might not be 100% right now, I don't know what the issue is, but the pass rush didn't look very good at all. Watson had all day to sit back there and throw and was picking apart the secondary because of it. Adoree Jackson, though, first career interception. He came up big. Taywan Taylor scores a touchdown. You
Yes,
mentioned him.
I
You
saw
said that he would need to
touchdown.
be more involved in the offense.
I
And he
saw
was.
that touchdown, yeah.
He ended
Yeah.
up scoring a touchdown. Whoever is at quarterback, whether it be Gabbert, whether Mariota comes back and he plays next week, because they've got Jacksonville next week.
Yes,
you want
they
to see
do.
where you are. You
I
go to
am-
Jacksonville next week.
I am looking at these upcoming games right now, and it's funny that we were talking about Jacksonville because the next time they play Jacksonville next week, and after that they had the former Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles,
Yep.
who had a very interesting weekend against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Let's not talk about the Buccaneers.
We'll
okay?
we'll go into that. We'll
I
go
don't-
into
I
that.
don't-
And then after that they have the Bills, who I mean they're kind of
The Bills are the Bills.
Yeah,
You
the
don't
Bills
even-
are the
the
Bills.
Bills are
There's-
gonna have the
yeah,
number one pick in the
yeah.
draft.
The
I
only
don't care
thing
what
that happened
anybody
with
says.
the only thing that happened with them is that they had a cornerback retire at halftime.
Yeah, Von. You know what? Listen here. Let's get this straight right now. Let's go ahead and talk about that.
Okay.
If I was on the Bills, okay, and I had been in the NFL for 10 plus years or however long that Vontae Davis has played, he was really good in his prime.
Yeah,
he's no longer in his prime. He's had a
No.
lot of injuries.
No.
If I'm Vontae Davis and I've been in the NFL for as long as I have, and I know that in my prime I was really good, and now I'm battling injuries. I'm just out here. I might leave too.
Yeah, I would too. I would
Teams
too,
have
yeah.
the right to cut players at any point in time without giving them an upfront notice, any kind of fallback plan. You can just cut a guy, or you can say, hey, you're no longer on our main roster. You're on the practice squad. He has all right to do that.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And I think he's just tired of how the Bills have been the past 10
I mean,
years.
would you want to play for the Bills?
No.
Would you want to play for this Bills team?
Unless like the Bills randomly go to like the Super Bowl or something, or like the playoffs, then yes, I would want to play for them. But as of right now, no.
No, I mean,
no.
and
Something
it's
definitely
different depending on the situation
Yeah.
of who the player is. But if you're Vontae Davis, I'm not saying
don't-
I
I don't
100%
blame
agree
you.
with him, but I don't blame him. He's got the
No.
right to do it.
No. Titans should win that game though, and that's
The Titans
that's
should
at,
win that game,
That's
absolutely.
that's at Buffalo too. And
It
then
doesn't
after-
matter where it is.
Well,
There is no
Okay.
home field advantage when you're the Buffalo Bills. There's not one. I'm sorry.
unless it's snowing.
If you're a Bills fan, I'm sorry. Honestly, I'm not sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for what you're having to go through this season and what you've had to go through the past 2 seasons.
I was gonna say I'm sorry what Bills fans have had to go through the past 10 seasons.
Yeah, I
don't
mean-
remember the last time they were good.
I have no apology for what I just said because it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. They're
Yeah.
really bad. They're going to have the number one pick in the draft. I apologize if you're a Bills fan that you've had to go through this. Similarly to Browns fans. Like if you're a Browns fan, I'm sorry. Your team is very bad at just winning games. I think they're going to win this Thursday. That's my new hot take. That's my Auburn LSU take right there.
Talk about it next week, and we will find out.
No, they're going to.
Yeah.
I got this. They're going to beat the Jets.
They almost beat the Saints over the
They almost
weekend.
beat the
They were
Saints.
3 points away.
They tied
Yeah.
the Steelers. I think they're going to beat the Jets. That's my little bold prediction for the week. So looking at some other stuff that went on in the NFL last week, I hate to admit this, and I'm really not going to admit anything. I'm just basically going to read the numbers. But right now there are 2 quarterbacks, Harrison, that are lighting the NFL on fire. One
is your favorite.
it's just starting. No. One at the beginning part of their career. One towards the twilight of their career. Given his twilight should have been a long time ago. I don't even know how he's still in the league. And since you want to call him my favorite, we'll start with him.
Okay, go
Ryan
ahead.
Fitzpatrick, Harrison.
Quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah. The average person would not have been able to tell you that before the season.
Nope.
The average NFL fan wouldn't have known that.
No.
Ryan Fitzpatrick right now, Harrison, is on pace to shatter, and I mean obliterate, the previous mark for passer rating in a single season. You want to know how high it is?
How
His
high?
passer rating right now?
Tell me.
151.5. Aaron Rodgers
my.
has the old record at 122.5. That's ridiculous.
insane.
Yeah, first of all, it's unsustainable. It's totally unsustainable. Nobody could sustain it. I don't care if Tom Brady had that kind of rating. Totally unsustainable. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, Harrison,
Of all
through 2
quarterbacks.
games this season, both opponents that he's gone up against, the Saints and the Eagles, he has thrown for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in each game. That is insane, first of all, for any quarterback. Then you throw in that it's been on a 78.7 completion percentage. So every 5 times he throws the football, 4 times somebody has caught it. He has been insane. So far this season, like I said, he is on pace to completely smash the old quarterback rating for one season record. And that blows my mind. If you're the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles, you just won the Super Bowl, and you come out here in week 2, and you get dominated by Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
You know, Tyler, I think just to make everything work out, I think you just need to put Ryan Fitzpatrick on your fantasy team. Maybe that will calm your nerves down or something.
I don't want to talk about my fantasy team right now. Okay? We'll talk about that later, and I know why you're bringing it up. But seriously, you go to week 1, the Saints, the NFC South favorites by far.
Yeah.
A lot of people picking them as a trendy Super Bowl pick.
They're probably not going to be the favorite anymore after them almost losing to the Browns this weekend. Yeah.
But you come out week 1 and you give up 42 points to an offense led by Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let me just give you guys a little reminder of who Ryan Fitzpatrick is. He's an interception machine.
Yeah, he is. He is.
I mean, nobody knows where this is coming from. This isn't like Kerry Collins with the Titans and Chris Johnson, because Kerry Collins didn't carry that team. That was all Chris Johnson. This is totally different. This is Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in for some reason to Dirk Cutter's offense. He's got weapons, granted. He's got Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard, and just flipping the world upside down, flipping his career upside down, Harrison. Do you have an explanation? Because I've got nothing. I got nothing.
Unless he's just suddenly gotten super, super good with the Buccaneers or so. I don't know, because I've seen, like, he is an interception machine, as we have seen him in the past and everything. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, I'd like to watch a video on, like, the in-depth of what goes on during the Buccaneers practice or, like, the training camps.
What kind of secret? They're giving him Michael's secret stuff from Space Jam.
What is the secret formula? What is going on?
Now listen, this happened once for him. It's happened once before. In 2015 with the Jets, he threw for 31 touchdowns, had 15 interceptions, almost threw for 4,000 yards, but that does not even compare to this. His passer rating that year was 88. Right now it's 151.5. I don't think it's him, as much so as the Saints and Eagles, I think, have some serious issues to fix on defense. The Saints almost just lost to the Browns.
Yeah, they did.
If you're telling me you almost lose to the Browns and you don't have some kind of issues, you do. You do have some issues. The Eagles very clearly have some issues.
Yeah, they do. And they're also getting Carson Wentz back this week.
They're getting Carson Wentz back. He's gonna fix a lot of that.
Yeah.
But they play the Colts this week, and that's an offense that's no joke either with Andrew Luck back.
No,
They've got some issues.
not.
They've got some issues. I'm just saying, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I don't know. I want to think that it's all a fluke, and within 3 or 4 weeks, this will all just even out. It'll kind of be like Alex Smith at the beginning of last season when everyone thought he was going to win MVP, and it just kind of evened out.
No.
That's what I want to think would happen. But I don't know. I mean, this is unprecedented for me. I've never seen anything like this. Just a guy who, for his entire career, you look back at some of his past seasons, 14 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, the last time he was a full-time starter.
Notice how in just those first 2 games, and it's probably the same way in his other stats, notice how the number of touchdowns he has are kind of similar to the number of interceptions.
Yeah, usually it is. But this season, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. 1 interception to his 8 touchdowns. On pace to break the passer rating record by 30 points. You know what? It happens, I guess. That's the best way I can put it. It happens.
Yeah, and we will see. I'm going to see Monday Night Football.
I know who they play. I know who they play.
Yeah,
I know who they play. I circled this game as one that I wanted to see, and here's why. Because last week the Steelers played the Chiefs, and that's the second guy I want to talk about. Patrick Mahomes. My goodness. 6 touchdown passes against that Steelers defense, which, just to go ahead and put an asterisk on that defense is terrible. That defense is just sad, okay? It's pitiful. Now, partially due to the fact that Ryan Shazier is unfortunately, very unfortunately, unable to play. Super talented guy. All the best wishes to him. That defense is bad.
Yeah,
it's bad.
We're not used. It's not the James Harrison and Lamar or Woodley that we're always used to. It's something. It's different. I'm kind of worried. I don't know what to expect from the Steelers this year.
They are having a lot of turmoil right now.
There's definitely some stuff going on, and I also saw this on SportsCenter today. Well, we know that Le'Veon Bell was out.
There's the Le'Veon Bell situation now.
And then there's also Antonio Brown.
Is
you knew
tweeting
you read
people.
my mind. You read my mind. Yeah.
He's telling people. Somebody tweeted at him something about Big Ben, and he said, "Hey, trade me and let's see." I mean, hey.
I think he's done with this. Yeah, it's from that comment. It
And
sounds
we
like he's
we
done with the
know from
Steelers.
reports that we've heard about this that he is on Le'Veon's side in
Yes,
this whole
he
contract
is.
dispute.
Yeah.
He is on Le'Veon's side. So if you're the Steelers, this is a very, very fragile situation. One thing could bust it all open if it's not already reached that point. We don't know what's going on in the locker room. We don't know what's going on internally.
No.
It could have already gone past that point.
Yeah, it could have something to do with Mike Tomlin too.
It could.
Yeah, because I think Antonio Brown mentioned him or something. I
don't
would
know.
have to look at the quote again.
I don't know, but they've got a tough matchup this week with the Chiefs. Mahomes, though, threw for 6 touchdowns against the Steelers.
Fantasy players
Set
must be
the
happy.
new NFL record. New NFL record.
For most
We're
passing touchdowns through 2 games
With 10.
10.
We're talking about Fitzpatrick possibly breaking the quarterback rating record. Mahomes right now, his passer rating would break the record. He's got a 143.3 passer rating. That's ridiculous. 2 guys right now on pace to smash the record. Neither of them coming into the season. Would you expect to do it?
Also has 20 points higher than A-Rod's record for a season.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's
Chiefs fans must be very happy right now.
I mean, what else would they be?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What else would they be? That Chiefs-Steelers game is one of the big games. Steelers-Buccaneers. Steelers-Buccaneers game, a big game to look forward to this week.
Good old Monday night.
As hot as Fitzpatrick has been, I mean, he's setting the world on fire coming out there in Deshaun Jackson's clothes and everything, looking like a hot shot. I mean, dang, dude. If Mahomes could torch that defense and you look at how well Fitzpatrick has played, he might throw for another 400 just to make me come out here and say all the same stuff again.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen is that there's going to reach a point where eventually I say, okay, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I believe in the Fitz-magic, and then he's going to go out there and throw 6 interceptions. That's what's going to happen. Other games, though, Jets at Browns, Thursday Night Football. Like I mentioned, I think the Browns can get their first win of the season. Bengals play the Panthers in Carolina. Titans go to the Jaguars. We talked about that. 49ers play the Chiefs this week. That'll be a good game. And then the Chargers and the Rams have a battle of Los Angeles. I mean, this is the game that I've got picked as the Super Bowl matchup.
Right.
Chargers and Rams. And I've got the Rams winning that game. The Chargers looked a lot better last week. Of course, it was against the Bills. I could go out there and play quarterback against the Bills and look pretty good. I'm really interested in seeing the 49ers and the Chiefs. A lot of these games I really want to see. But that Chargers-Rams game, I think, is going to be the game of the week, bar none. And this is where I really find out if my pick was solid, because this Chargers defense looked really bad against the Chiefs. But now we know Patrick Mahomes makes any defense look bad, it seems like.
Yeah.
The combination of him with Andy Reid, who is an offensive mastermind. I mean, well, yeah, I think it's going to be another really good week of NFL football.
I do too. And I like with these games that you have picked out. Obviously, there's some other. Every week is something to look forward to when it comes to NFL.
So with that, we'll move on from the NFL. And Harrison's been bugging me about my fantasy team. He's really getting into me on that. And you'll figure out why. Right after this, we'll talk fantasy football. Okay, so now it's time for you all to figure out why it is that Harrison has been bugging me so much about my fantasy team. Quite simply, Harrison, we matched up this week, didn't we, in fantasy? And
Who won?
well, you did. Harrison beat me, and I'm not very happy about it at all. You're gonna figure out why right now, actually. So basically, it came down to the Sunday night football game between the Giants and the Cowboys. I was down by 15. It was about 17, somewhere in there. And I'm like, okay, I've got OBJ left. This dude has got this. This Cowboys secondary is terrible. They've been terrible for a while now. They just don't have anybody back there. And OBJ comes out there and puts up a solid 9 points. 9. Bilal Powell by himself had 19.
I have Bilal Powell too.
Yeah.
He had 19.
Yeah, he outscored David Johnson.
Who only
and
ran
Odell
for like,
Beckham
what,
Jr.
6 yards? David Johnson?
He tried it. He ran for 48 yards. He had 6 points. And this all comes down to this. I watched that Giants-Cowboys game, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I watched it, and I was really getting into it. I was cheering so hard for Odell Beckham Jr. and the Giants. And at this point, I can tell you, I am now a fan of every team that the Giants play for the rest of the season. I am just anti-Giants. Here's why.
Including three of the other three teams in the NFC.
Yes, I am an NFC East fan sans Giants. Okay, here's why. I watched that game. The Giants were down 20-3 in that game with 5 minutes left. They've got the ball, right? Mm-hmm. I watched them waste 4 minutes driving down the field, dinking it, dunking it. Oh, Saquon Barkley's open 3 yards from the line of scrimmage? Sure. Just dump it off to him, Eli. You got him. And then you've got, there's Evan Ingram 5 yards on a drag route. I'll give it to him. Just wasting the clock. Down 17 points. OBJ is the best dink and dunk receiver in football.
Why do you think they made him the highest paid receiver?
He is the highest paid receiver in football. You're down by 17 points and you're not going to throw him the ball?
It did not look like that on Sunday night. I can tell you that.
Saquon Barkley, Harrison, 14 catches for 80 yards. OBJ, 4 catches for 51. OBJ had 4 catches. If you're an offensive coordinator, or the play caller in this case, who is the head coach Pat Shurmur for the Giants, and you can't get OBJ the ball more than 4 times, and you are paying him more than any other wide receiver in the NFL, and you get him the ball 4 times in a game where you're trailing the entire game, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong, or Eli Manning's doing something wrong.
First it was Fitzpatrick, and now it's the Giants, and
it's a weekly thing. Somebody gets the ire.
I'm very
of my fantasy.
I am also disappointed from the Giants as well. I didn't watch that game, but when I got back home, it was halftime, and I think the Cowboys were winning like 14-3 or like 21-0 or something like that. I'm like, that's not normal. I haven't seen that from the Cowboys against the Giants, really. I mean, what?
No, the Cowboys aren't very good this year.
No,
the Giants are just
no.
worse.
There are a lot of teams that aren't good this year that we were thinking were going to be good, but apparently they're just not. It's just been a very
apparently
rocky start.
This is the kind of year when Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to come out and win the MVP. Is that how this is going to be NFL? Is that the kind of season we're in for? I feel like this is rigged. Someone has planned this.
Do you remember his press conference too?
He comes out there in Deshaun Jackson's clothes. Someone planned all this. Anyways. Giants, I'm very disappointed in you, OBJ. I'm okay. It's not your fault. I can't blame you for not getting targets. This week, though, fantasy roll of the dice. These guys are locks.
If I may say, back in fantasy football, you also did not have any players on your bench. Maybe
my entire bench is injured. I just start the guys that I have. This week, I got 2 guys that are coming back. Whatever.
Okay.
I got 2 guys that are injured. I can't do anything about guys that are injured.
You will win the next round, whoever you play.
Yeah, I got Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey stashed. I mean,
yeah.
And then, another thing. Speaking of my fantasy roll of the dice this week, I thought I had a pretty good week last week. I had Phillip Rivers in as the quarterback. He did great. My wide receiver was Josh Gordon. He got cut before the game. I mean, come on.
Now he's for the Patriots.
Come on, man.
And now Tom Brady has a ton of options on his offense, like 6 different options.
Yeah, imagine having Gronkowski, and then you've got Josh Gordon, and then you've got Julian Edelman coming back soon.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, whatever.
So they don't need any more wide receivers or tight ends. They got it all. They
will be just fine. The Jaguars game might have just scared the AFC a little bit, but the Patriots are still going to be okay.
I think Brady's going to just continue throwing the ball to Gronk unless they can figure out what to do with Josh Gordon.
Oh, they'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Bill Belichick.
They will.
If anyone's going to figure it out,
he is the longest running head coach for any team in the NFL.
There's a reason.
Exactly.
He's the best head coach in the NFL. It's not even close. He's the best head coach in the NFL.
Definitely.
Anyways, my quarterback for this week. Last week I said it was Phillip Rivers. He was playing the Bills. This week, I could say Ryan Fitzpatrick against the Steelers, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say Kirk Cousins. And you know why, Harrison? One reason. They play the Bills. That's it. My entire reasoning. Some people will start the team on defense as playing the Browns. That was a trend last year. This year, whatever quarterback is playing the Bills is a good play. This week, it's Kirk Cousins. And I am a little biased. I start Kirk Cousins. He is my starter. Like I said, I stand up for my fantasy guys.
I'd say Kirk Cousins is pretty underrated.
He is. He's the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. I will tell anybody that any day. But last week, Phillip Rivers, he scored 22.7 against Buffalo. The defense is terrible. Now they don't have Vontae Davis, so there's no way to go but down from there. Cousins, he just threw for 4 touchdowns and 400 yards, and that was against the Packers in that tie. So I see him having another big week out of the quarterback spot. At running back, I've got Deion Lewis from the Titans. And it's really hard for me to say that just because the Titans running backs are really inconsistent, but it seemed like in that game against the Texans, he established himself as the number 1 running back for the Titans. And not only is he the lead running back, he is out there on third down in pass catching situations. And last week, James White had 7 catches for like 70-something yards against the Jaguars defense. That's a weakness of theirs. I think he's going to be able to expose it. I hope your guy Taywan doesn't steal too many catches from him. I hope.
Let's hope so. I'll keep an eye on it.
I hope for the sake of my integrity.
I do have Jack Doyle
picks
on my fantasy team, but I don't have Taywan Taylor. But I still keep on watch on Taywan Taylor.
I know
so,
you love your Western alum.
Yeah.
I do too. We all do. All of us.
Yeah, definitely. I like to see how they do,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
My wide receiver now is not Taywan Taylor. I can say that. It's not anybody from the Titans. Marquise Goodwin of the San Francisco 49ers versus the Chiefs I've got. The reason for that being this Chiefs defense, as good as the offense has been, Mahomes has been fantastic. Tyreek Hill's been fantastic. Kareem Hunt's been awesome. Travis Kelce, great. That defense is equally as bad. It has been pretty atrocious. That last week against the Steelers, between Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown, those two, Harrison, 46.8 fantasy points between those two. 46.8. So I think Marquise Goodwin is going to get his share of those points. Probably score a touchdown as well, because the 49ers and Jimmy G are going to have to score to keep up with the Chiefs and try to give themselves a chance at this game.
Definitely.
So I've got Marquise Goodwin at the receiver, and then my extra flex player is Giovanni Bernard of the Bengals. Normally the backup running back, Joe Mixon, out this week. So Giovanni Bernard is in their game against the Panthers. He scored 8.2 points last week, filling in for Joe Mixon. And then this is the Panthers defense that just gave up 100 yards to Tevin Coleman, who is normally a backup running back for the Falcons as well. So I think Gio is going to be in for a big week for the Bengals. That's it for our fantasy coverage. To my Giants fans out there, I'm so sorry. So we've touched on everything at this point. We've got college football. We've touched on the NFL. We've touched on fantasy. We got natural selection in there. We had Harry's Heisman Hopefuls. We've touched on everything right now. But wait. We've got one thing left, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We have one thing left to do, and that's what not to watch for this week. Harrison, what do you think people should not be watching for this week in football?
I am going to use my what not to watch for. It's going to be one game this time. Last week it was 3 games.
One game.
But this time I am going to say the Notre Dame and Wake Forest
Okay.
game. Yes. Notre Dame is number 8 in the top 25. I just don't think it's going to be that very good game to watch, and I don't think anything is going to change.
Okay.
I think it's going to be like another 24 and like 16
Okay.
score. Yeah,
So it's just going to be another rehash.
Yeah, another rehash, another repeat.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well,
unless
this one-
something can change, but that's what. Yeah.
This one, Harrison, specifically I've picked out for you. Okay. This week, the Raiders go to Miami to take on the Dolphins. And my what not to watch for this week, Harrison, do not watch for the first win of the second John Gruden era in Oakland. This Raiders team does not look good. Derek Carr looked fantastic. He only had 3 incompletions in that game.
Yeah.
In that last game, but I don't know, man. John Gruden would say, I don't know, man. Come on,
I mean,
man.
if they do go 0-3, then I am rethinking my Super Bowl.
I would already be
Yeah.
thinking.
Oh,
it at
I'm
this
already.
point.
Yeah. I mean, they're 0-2 already, so I'm already
Right.
just kind of like, do I go with? Yeah, I'm going with someone else, but not yet. I don't know who yet, but yeah, no, I would. Yeah,
I
would
mean,
have to
as
agree
good
with
as
you on
Carr
that.
was last week, that defense is not very good. They miss Khalil Mack. They really miss Khalil Mack. John Gruden won't tell you that.
No,
They
no.
really miss Khalil Mack, and I don't see him getting it done this week. This is a Dolphins team that knocked off the Titans.
in 7 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah, and given it was 7 hours and 10 minutes, but they did knock off
That is
the
true.
Titans.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
those are what not to watch for this week. Harrison saying, stay away from that Notre Dame Wake Forest game. It's going to be just another ugly slop fest. If you wanted to see that game, you could have seen it 3 times already.
I mean, you're welcome to watch it if you're a Wake Forest fan. If you think they're going to win or something.
Right, if you
but,
think the Demon Deacons got a chance. If you're like Natalie in natural selection, you think the Demon Deacons got this one, then go and tune in. But for Harrison, I am Tyler Eaton. Huge thank you to John Alden for joining us to talk about some college football. Big thank you for Natalie coming back and doing natural selection once again. This has been the 3rd episode now of the Nickel and Dime podcast. If you are listening/watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe. If you're listening somewhere else, give us a follow. Whatever the platform offers, drop one for us. We would really appreciate that. Let us know that you are watching. And now, as Michael Scott would say, We'll catch you on the flippity flip.